Welcome back to this session, third session of software. In the previous session, we talked about software applications and software new categories. So software application, we talked about system software, we talk about application software, we talk about embedded software, we talk about AI software and all. And we have seen certain example of the software application. And also we see new categories of software that has come into pictures, like if it is computing, right? Then we have seen some kind of data mining software and all those things. So in this session, we'll talk about what is the legacy software, okay, and why we require certain changes in the legacy software, okay. Then we'll talk about the software crisis, and lastly we'll talk about the characteristic web application, because in today we see one of the most widely used application is the web application itself. So now let us come understand what do you mean by a legacy software. So legacy software is a software that has been exist for a very long time, and it still is in such a use, or you can say it is able to cater the business need, right? So may a software which may be long back, 20 years or more than that also is still existing from that, and in still it is, useful for the business. So such kind of software are called legacy software. We'll see certain example. You may be knowing that, one of the most, widely used Windows is Windows 7. Okay. And this Windows 7 has been Microsoft has stalled providing no security updates and all these things on January 2020. But however, if you still see there are around 100 million machines continue to run in this operating system, right? Even I was been using in my office, Windows 7 for last around month, and I have updated now into Windows 10 itself. Another language, it is the COBOL language, Common Business Oriented Language, and it is still used. It is 55 years of, after it developed. Many of you may not have born when this COBOL has there. And you see many of the businesses and government organizations, probably today also depends on this particular language, okay. So COBOL still execute, it still exists itself. And some of the what you say Oracle products, okay, still like e-business tools and people software. So what I mean to say is that this legacy software, okay, still has been around for a very long time, and still fulfills the business needs, like Windows 7 still people are using this, and still COBOL are still in particular use of this. Now, even though there is legacy software talking, why it must change, why software has been changed. So if you see, I have colored it, the word that it is. So one of the most important thing is the adaptability, right? The software needs to adapt. Okay, the new type of computation environment that is coming up, new kind of technology that is coming up. So my software has to adapt to these particular needs. Okay, and second, enhancement. Okay, so there may be certain new requirements, new business directions. Okay, new business policies which or new business logics or something like that may comes into, and that may demand that there has to be some kind of enhancement required from the software, right? And thirdly, if you say it has to be extended, okay, to make it more interoperable, right? If you are having many devices coming up, modern systems coming up, different databases coming up, so how much software will be able to extend and can be easily extended to this particular environment on all these things. And now again, you see, we are talking about a network environment and all, right? So my software need to be re-architect, okay, so that it is viable in this particular network environment. So if you see the keywords, why it must be said, the adaptability is one, okay, enhancement is there, okay, we need to extend to make it interoperable, okay, and we there has to be some change in the, or there may be re-architect to it. So that's the reason why there has to be a change. And today, the legacy software, actually, when you talk about legacy, but still you require certain changes that to be made. Okay, so but the reason is still why people still using it. Okay, you can Google and you can see a lot of articles out coming up, right? If you see that if there has to be change from this particular legacy system to the modern system, a huge cost, okay, is associated with it. Typically, if you see in medical science, okay, in medical science, when you're talking about health records and all this thing, there's still a worry. Okay, if this particular comes into an in a complete online accessibility and all, there have been a very chances of hacking the entire system itself. Okay, right. So there are certain factors to which still we are not able to move from the the existing legacy software itself. Okay, now software crisis, right? Okay, so now we see the best part of the software. You see certain software which are very frequently used and all these things and all. But if you critically, if you see, there are a lot of things which dies in the markets, okay, which are not able to actually exist. The reason why, you know one of the most important aspect of a software is to have to fulfill the requirements, the user requirements, right? And if it fails in or if it fails to meet that particular user requirement, then entire software will be collapse. And certain times it comes, you have developed a software but keep on crashing of the software due to some kind of memory overflow, or maybe some kind of technical issue, or maybe there will be bugs into the particular software. And if we can't keep it, keep on crashing, then that also software, if you see, it's not going to work on it. Expensive, yes. We thought of developing a software. We give a complete analysis what will be the cost associated while developing it, and suppose it exceed that particular cost, right? And then we can see that it's a failure of the software itself. Then at that instant you created a software. Then when you think that created you think that you need to do some kind of debugging, some kind of enhancement, some kind of changing into that particular, and your entire architecture through which you have developed, okay, or the framework, it doesn't support it. It's a failure, right? Often it may happen, we require a software to develop all the time, and due to there are a lot of factors we'll understand when we discuss this kind in the software engineering, okay, right? There may be a late in delivering the software itself. Again, that also may result into the software failure itself. Okay, another is resource, optimal use of the resource. If you're not able to optimally utilize this particular resource also, okay, right? Maybe memory, maybe we're talking about network resource, memory resource, and all those things. Okay, right? Execution and time, all this, if you are not CPU utilization and all this thing, so there may be a complete failure of the software itself, right? So these are certain things which actually are the factors where there is a failure, okay, or the failure of this particular software itself. Okay, now let us see under certain characteristics of a web application, because I was telling that web application has been one of the most demanding right now. Okay, some of the characteristics, it's one is the network intensive, the high level at which you are using to the low. Okay, and we can see that it serves the different community of the concurrency. When you talk of concurrency, use a large number of people are using that particular or accessing that particular at a particular point of time. You can see, right? Unpredictable load, yes. Certain times it happens, the number of user that it's been using, okay, it may be less. At a certain point of time it may flooded with people using that particular thing. So that's what is called the unpredicted load itself. Performance, yes, important, right? An application have to wait on, still it did display, suddenly you found send a request and you're waiting for a long period of time. Okay, so performance is one of the very important character. We don't have to wait too long, okay, to get that entire what you want. Availability, yes, and it expecting that 100% availability when you cross 24 cross 7 365 24 continuously for 24 whole day, right? Whole week, whole year, you have a 100% of availability, right, of that particular web app itself. Okay, data driven, yes. So we have text, we have graphics, we have videos, content to the user, okay, and content sensitiveness with the quality of the content or the aesthetic nature of the content. Okay, it's very, very important. So quality is continuously evolving. Yes, you need to continuously evolve. Okay, right? Continuously new things has to be added, things have to be removed, and you really have to catch all, the interest of the user itself. Okay, immediacy. Okay, right? It is something which is something, you need to put it into quickly into the market. Competitiveness is very high. You come up with an idea, okay, and within a few days or weeks you try to build, and you throw into the market and see how exactly it is trying to get into that particular market itself. Security, yes, since we are working across this particular network, security is one of the most important aspect when you are talking about web app. And finally, it is the look and the feel, which we have already talked about, right? So in this particular session, we talked about legacy software. What is a legacy software, right? And we have seen certain example of the legacy software, and why there has to be a change from the legacy software itself. Also, you have seen, right, certain key points that I have given to you, which you should understand why the changes has been happened. Then we see why certain software crisis in the terms of why the failure of the software itself. Okay, right? Then we move into certain characteristics of web application, because web application is one of the most important application today itself, right? So having said this, so we come up to the end of understanding the software, starting from what is a software, starting from what is a software, some characteristics of the software, that different types of software. We move into the legacy software, that we have seen some kind of what is the software crisis with some of the characteristics in the web applications and all those things. So I hope by going through this particular three videos, you have a very good or clear idea about software itself. Thank you so much.